Hello and welcome to another game of Company of Heroes. I am Fancy Josh, and today we have a game between AshaBlois, our Wehrmacht player, and Barbarossa as the Soviet army. Now, both of these players are incredibly highly rated. AshaBlois is from South Korea. He is first on the ladder as the Western German army. Today he's playing as the Wehrmacht, and he is third as the Wehrmacht, so a very, very experienced player. I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. And his opponent, Barbarossa, as the Soviet army, is rated 30th. So this is going to be a great game. Barbarossa is also from South Korea. I haven't ever gotten to see these players play, so can't wait to see what this game brings. So we have, the map today is going to be Mill Road. This is one of the newer maps in the pool. Fairly balanced map. I really like it, so let's take a closer look here. So this point here for the blue side and this point here for the red side connects. Those are critical cutoff points because they connect you to your fuel on both sides of the map. We're going to see players try and take that point away from each other in order to deny each other fuel. It's not easy to do because the point is very close to your base, but players will try nonetheless. This point here connects you to your munitions, and likewise this point here connects you to your munitions up there. We might see players go for that, but what usually happens is they just go straight for the munitions point rather than for the cutoff point because it's so out of the way to capture it away from your opponent. Both players with a fairly standard opening. Our German player has gone for the Ostruppen doctrine, which gives him access to these Ostruppen squads, and he is adding those on in lieu of the Grenadier squads that he has access to from his default army. So he's calling in these specialist squads. They're a larger squad. They function a lot like conscripts. They're sort of a send them into the meat grinder, expect to lose numerous squad members before retreating. They're far from elite. They are very, very similar to conscripts in a lot of ways. I do believe they have a bonus for fighting in cover and in garrisons. Yep, they do. So when they're in garrisons like that, they're more effective at firing, and that's why we see him using cover heavily here. A heavy machine gun trying to get involved here. It's facing the wrong direction, and both players committing pretty much all their forces down here. Big fight. Looks like the German will eventually win this, especially if this heavy machine gun gets involved. Looks like he's just putting it there to prevent any reinforcements from getting involved from the Soviet player. Both players in control of their fuel right now, so they're actually very equal in resource income overall. It's actually a split map situation here. Yeah, so let's quickly talk about this Ostruppen commander just a little bit more. They also get access to these trenches that they can build, and they can put their Ostruppen in them to make them more effective at fighting. They get access to this auxiliary field officer, which is a close-range squad. They are effective in combat, and they have a few buffs and call-ins that they can bring in. They also get access to a supply drop. Drops in Pack 40 and an MG34 with some munitions. We'll probably see him use that. Can't believe this fight is still going on. I mean, this is what happens when you fight at long range and in heavy cover. So these squads can stay here forever and ever and just keep fighting. Last thing you get access to with this Ostruppen commander is this railway auxiliary support. Gigantic artillery rounds. They're fairly inaccurate, but they can deny an area of the field for quite some time. Heavy machine gun squad setting up on those conscripts there. Yeah, great game to start us off. Both players have added on 4 infantry squads, and our German added on the heavy machine gun as well. Continuing to steal points away from each other. very equal on victory points so far. Nothing too surprising there. Brawl breaking out here. So I like this choice to close this gap by these conscripts. Conscripts can fight effectively at close range, assuming that their opponent doesn't have some sort of close range weapons like SMGs. And by closing that gap there, he's actually able to deny the bonuses of the cover that those Ostrupen were sitting in. Cover is directional in this game. I talk about it in every single game that I cast. So you have to have the cover between you and the bullets in order for it to be effective. The other thing that negates cover is if you close the gap. So if you get really close, the cover is no longer providing the defensive bonuses that it normally does. And by closing that gap earlier, he made it so that his opponent wasn't getting those benefits. Looks like our German player has teched up to his tier 2 building and added on a scout car here. This thing is effective at long range. It can be used to get up in the face of your opponent and sort of disrupt them. When infantry squads will automatically get out of the way of a vehicle, it's to prevent themselves from being run over. But you can still run them over if you do it right. And you can also abuse it a little bit by driving into units that are standing in cover, and they will dive out of the way and no longer be getting the benefit of that cover. So that's what we saw him do there. He drove around the cover, pushed him out of that heavy cover, and destroyed them on retreat. We also saw that our Soviet player has teched into AT grenades, which is totally unsurprising, and he threw one at that scout car so that the scout car would have its engine damaged and it wouldn't be able to chase down the conscript squad while it was retreating and potentially kill it. So yeah, like I was saying, the scout car is effective at long range, and you generally want to sit way back and just sort of ping your opponent. At least that's the common, that's a common strategy with the vehicle. You don't want to be close to your opponent because you don't want him to be able to throw AT grenades at you. You don't want to be in range of anti-tank weapons. Great placement of this scout car. He's hiding behind this bush here, so even if there was an AT gun, it wouldn't have direct line of sight on the scout car, so I really like that. Now, this strategy that our German player is using was very common back when this game first came out. It was at the tournament level. It was a very common strategy to see this Ostrupen instead of Grenadiers. So it's kind of refreshing to see that. You don't see it as often these days. Now our German player has added on an AT gun in preparation for vehicles, which our Soviet player's adding on right now. Soviet player's adding on a half-track, so he has teched up to his tier 2 building, which gives him access to light vehicles and light armor. It's really common to see a T-70 added on. In this case, he's elected to go with the half-track. He's probably got a specific strategy in mind for that. And that is definitely a losing fight for the Soviet player, but he did delay the German player as long as he could, despite the overwhelming firepower. AT gun setting up in the middle here. Now, yeah, I was going to say, I think we're probably going to see this half-track upgraded to this anti-air package, which puts an AA gun on top of this thing, makes it lethal against infantry, and it's effective at long range. So we'll probably see him, similar to the scout car, sort of sit way back and just damage units at long range. By the way, I love this skin. This is my favorite skin in the game, that red and white. Looks really good on a variety of vehicles, and I don't know if I've seen it on a half-track, at least not recently, so happy to see him using that skin. Now let's... Oh, that's big. Oh my goodness, he lost the half-track. You know, I saw that mine being planted earlier, and I didn't talk about it, but, wow, that is unfortunate for the Soviet player. Now, what I was going to say is this half-track is effective against that scout car. They're both relatively effective against each other, and the fight will often be decided by supporting units like AT guns or AT grenades. But that half-track just ran into this mine in the middle of the field and blew up. That is a really, really valuable mine. He is not happy about that, I guarantee it. Because he spent He spent fuel on that thing to call it in. He spent the manpower to build it. And he spent munitions to upgrade it to that anti-air package. And that is not a cheap upgrade. So he is hurting after that. We see our German player is actually capturing the critical cutoff point I mentioned early in this game. So he's actually denying fuel to the Soviet player right now. You can see he's down to 10 per minute right now. Yeah, the German has taken a sizable lead with that by killing that vehicle. Continuing to use these Osttroopen at long range while setting them in cover. That's definitely how you want to fight it out. The scout car has nice space in here. It's kind of sitting back. If there was an AT gun here, he would be able to get out of there relatively safely. It's dangerous to leave the scout car at this level of health because now it's susceptible to potentially it would require 2 additional hits. But that could come in the form of AT grenades or an AT gun, so definitely risky to keep it around with that level of health. I believe that AT gun is set to shoot at infantry as well. I don't mind that. It's very ineffective at shooting at infantry, but it can occasionally kill one, and it'll also shoot and destroy cover if the infantry's behind cover. Just fights all over the map here. The Soviet player's trying to get back some of that territory that he's lost recently. And actually, the German player has control of, or he will soon have control of all 3 victory points, and you can see that reflected in the victory point score there. The Soviet player is starting to fall behind a little bit. And that favors the German player significantly because in addition to... There's a T-70 added on. Germans tend to get stronger the later the game goes. And there are, of course, ways to... That's not always true, depending on the build choices of the German player. And in this case, the German player has gone for a strategy that I think is stronger in the early game and weaker in the mid and late game. Just because of the nature of that infantry, they're not as high... they're not as elite, so even if they vet up, they won't be as strong as, say, an elite squad that has vetted up. This T-70's in a dangerous spot. That AT gun is setting up. He's getting behind the scout car. He might be able to kill it. Oh, he did kill the heavy machine gun there. Nicely done. And I think he's just barely going to get out of range of that AT gun. Wow. Both vehicles down to their last hit here. Big fight over this cutoff point, as I was talking about earlier. I mean, he's currently the German is denying fuel to his opponents, so Panzerfaust might kill this tank. Yep, nicely done. That was a ability of these Osttroopen, and it cost 25 munitions. He called that in on that T-70 to destroy it. So yeah, I would say our German player is out to a very sizable lead right now. He's destroyed 2 light vehicles from his opponent, and he has enough fuel to start thinking about a medium tank. I don't know if he's teched up yet. He has. Okay, so he has teched up to tier 3 there, which is going to give him access to medium tanks, and we're probably going to see him call in one pretty soon. He has to build the building first, which just costs manpower, and then we're probably going to see him add on a Panzer IV. And the Soviet player can deal with that Panzer IV if he adds on another AT gun, but he's not going to have armor of his own for quite some time here, especially because he's had his fuel denied several times this game. Now these Osttroopen squads have been upgraded with these MG42 light machine guns. It's going to make them very effective at long range. They're basically able to fulfill their role even better. They can sit back in this cover at long range and use that light machine gun to push away Soviet squads. Soviet player managed to capture away 2 of the points for a brief time there, but the German's going to put a swift end to that and start ticking down his total here. This heavy machine gun, I really like this. He's traveling around as a pack here. He's got his heavy machine gun to potentially suppress a large number of squads. He's got his Osttroopen to back that up, and then he's got his scout car that can provide long-range vision and it also does decent in combat, so. Didn't talk about these Panzer Grenadiers added on by our German player. I think that's a great add at this stage in the game. All of his squads are not elite, and they are effective at long range in cover. This squad is the opposite. It's effective at medium and short range. It's a bit of an elite squad, a lot of health, hard to hit. So by adding this on, he's added an additional wrinkle that our Soviet player has to deal with, so I like that add-on. These things can be upgraded with Panzerschrecks. It can actually add 2 Panzerschrecks into the squad, which make that squad effective against vehicles. It doesn't usually kill vehicles, but it is incredibly dangerous for a Soviet player to sit in range of a Panzerschreck, so it's a big deterrence. So we may see him add those on, we may not, depending on how he wants to use that squad. Our Soviet player has added on a second AT gun. I think that's really smart. In anticipation of those Panzer IVs coming out, he needs to be able to deal with those when they get on the field. We see the AT gun here on the left side. It's actually shooting these sandbags, destroying that cover, potentially denying them to his opponent. And I think he's bringing this up to barrage. I think he's about to barrage this heavy machine gun. There it goes. So that is exactly what that barrage ability is for. It's effective against support guns, and as you can see, it's not very accurate, but if it lands a critical hit, it could kill the entire squad. And he's using that to support his conscripts while he captures the point. And he didn't manage to capture the point because there's a big flank coming from this German player. Soviet player recognized that. He cannot afford to lose that AT gun right here, so he's backing off. Really smart. Anticipating the flank. And wow, this German player has taken even more control of this game. He's got the cutoff point again, denying his opponent that fuel. And now he's going to go capture the fuel for himself. Meanwhile, he has a vast majority of the map. He's even capturing these points down here. He's got all the fuel, all the munitions. His income is quite high. And he's adding on a... Oh, Sturm... It's a Sturmpanzer? Yeah, I believe that's a Sturmpanzer. I know what the tank is, I just can't remember the name for it. We'll see in just a second here when it's built. So Sturmpanzer is effective at dealing with infantry. It is not good against tanks, but it does have a ton of frontal armor. It bounces everything, not everything. It bounces many of the shots that hits its front armor, and it can feel like everything when you're dealing with a vehicle like this. Yeah, it is the Sturmpanzer. Fires an artillery-like shell that can impact, if it hits a squad, it can kill the whole thing. It's really effective against support weapons that can't move out of the way. But I think they've buffed it in recent years so that it is more effective against infantry as well. It'll lead the targets. It used to be that it wouldn't lead the targets and it would fire and it would just miss because the infantry squad would get out of the way, and it made it not very effective. But they buffed it, and now it is definitely more effective against infantry. The conscript squad's got to get out of there. I think it's going to live just barely. Yep, there's that Sturmpanzer barraging the house there. Hiding from those AT guns behind the house a little bit. Wow, that squad's got to get out of there. I gotta go. No. It's probably focused on keeping these support weapons alive over here. Nice grenade, that's gonna kill most of the squad. Nice barrage to try and counteract that push. Just barely keeping that squad alive. I think he did end up losing that conscript squad because he was so focused on dealing with that squad that was pushing his... Yeah. And there's a surrender from Barbarossa, our Soviet player. I don't blame him. I mean, he has been on the back foot this entire game. He does not have enough fuel to get up into his medium tanks. And that kind of goes back to the fact that he lost 2 light vehicles. He would have been better off not even purchasing those vehicles, saving that fuel to go for medium tanks. That said, I mean, if he'd built those light tanks and half tracks, he could have used them to give himself map control, but he lost them so quickly that he wasn't able to establish that map control, and effectively it was a waste of the fuel. You can see our German players actually adding on a Panzerwerfer, half-track rocket artillery. I actually like that addition here. So I was saying earlier that the Soviet player needed to add on AT guns to deal with a Panzer IV coming out from our German player. Well, our German player didn't add a Panzer IV. He added a Sturmpanzer into a Rocketwerfer, and that was going to be incredibly effective against everything the Soviet player has. I mean, the German player anticipated the fact that he's so far ahead on fuel that he can just add anti-infantry options and deal with anything that the Soviet can field here. So what a great game. Really putting on a clinic from our German player. I expect nothing less from the top player in the world. And I hope you guys enjoyed this game as much as I did. See you in the next one.